Dear brothers and sisters, good morning. And I'm thankful to Aid to the Church in Need. Aid to the Church in Need invited me to come here and share the situation of Christians in Pakistan. So thank you very much. One point is Pakistan came into being on 1947, 14 August. Before creation of Pakistan, Christians living in Pakistan, especially Punjab, because Punjab was to be divided for creation of Pakistan. So Christians in Punjab played a very vital role for creation of Pakistan. So S.P. Bahadur Singha was a leader, and Qaid-e-Azam, founder of Pakistan, Mr. Jinnah, visited Christian leaders, and Christian leaders assured their support to Mr. Jinnah for the creation of Pakistan. So in this way, Pakistan came into being, and the first speaker of Punjab Assembly was Christian leader, S.P. Bahadur Singha. His photo is still there in the Punjab Assembly. So slowly, after that, Pakistan in 1956 drifted from the original mission and moved toward Islamic Republic of Pakistan. While at the creation of Pakistan, Mr. Jinnah openly said that this will be the new country. Muslim will be free to go to the mosque, Hindus will be free to go to the temple, Christian to the churches. So state will have no business of individuals' faith. All will work for the progress and fortification of Pakistan. So from the beginning, Christian played very vital role for the creation, progress and fortification of Pakistan through their institutions like educational institutions. Many leaders, presently also many leaders are product of our schools, like Benazir Bhutto, also presently Prime Minister of Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif, also Chief Minister of Punjab, where I come from, Shahbaz Sharif, also from our school, and even Speaker of National Assembly, Ayaz Sadiq, is also from our school. So in this way, we contributed a lot. We created many leaders, even in army. Also in health sector, also in social sectors, whenever there was some emergencies like floods or some other plagues, so Christians played very vital role. And still they are playing a very vital role for the progress of Pakistan, working through in armies and also in judiciary, other fields of the field. Only in 1971, after 71, when Bhutto became Prime Minister, so I don't know what happened. We always thought that he was a very liberal leader, but in his time, then the country started moving toward more Islamized country, and Ahmadiyyas were announced as a minority group. Later on, Ziaul Haq, he was army chief also, president also. He imposed martial law, and at the same time, he introduced many Islamic laws. In Islamic laws, we Christians also suffered, other minority also. One should also understand that in that laws, Islamic laws, the witnessing law, according to witnessing law, for example, I'm Christian, and if I see somebody robbing bank, I, as a Christian, have half value of witnessing. So if I witness that somebody is robbing, then my witness is not enough. So there should be two male Christian or minority man. So they are two minority people will be equal to one Muslim. And the same with the women. If this is a Muslim woman, will be two for one man. And then if there are minority women, then there should be four. So it became so impossible to live and with the freedom and for the harmonious society and work for justice and all these problems. Then blasphemy law was also introduced, and with the blasphemy law, many people were victimized, and still they are victimized. And you know, I mean, many things through media, there is no need to go into detail because we have short time. So anyhow, many people are being victimized. What we are doing, we are telling again and again government and agencies, we are not saying or suggesting repealing of blasphemy because we know it's difficult. What we are suggesting is to make some legislation to stop the misuse of blasphemy law, misuse. So there are some Pakistani also here, so they can agree with me. We are talking that to stop the misuse of blasphemy law. Like, I mean, there were many incidents. People were alleged or victimized of blasphemy law. Like 2 years back, there was a couple burnt alive in Kot Radhakishan, and it took just a few seconds to burn them. How they were blamed? It was Sunday. They were totally uneducated couple, totally uneducated, plus very, very poor, low than even the borderline of poverty, working for making bricks, brick kilns. It was Sunday, so they were cleaning their room, and some people just out of jealousy, I don't know what type of jealousy they had against them because they were totally very poor people and also illiterate, no comparison even. So anyhow, just somebody said that we saw that they were burning papers, and on those papers there were some paper from the Holy Quran. Just they said it, and then somebody reported to Imam. Imam made announcement, and just in 20 minutes time, more than 4,000 people got together. They came, they started beating them. They had 2 children. Children were running here and there for life. And this furnace where the bricks are made is very close. So when they were already half dead, then they were thrown into the furnace. And just in 5 minutes, 7 minutes time, they were totally burnt. Later, people learned that the lady was pregnant of 6 months. So out of these 4,000 people, nobody listened or paid attention to their cry. No one had any mercy. No one wanted to hear them. So it was just. Later, when judiciary inquiry was made, they were proved innocent. First of all, even the judiciary report says they are Christian, so it means also they had no Quran or any Quranic papers in their home. They were totally uneducated, illiterate, so they even did not have Bible in their home. So in this way, so there are many cases like this. People are blamed, killed or burnt, and later on the findings show that they were innocent. So that is why we are saying to the government, let us make some laws to stop the misuse of blasphemy law. And it is still increasing. Last week, one man in Mardan, also university boy, was killed by a university student. So in this way, there are problems. Then we faced problem with the textbooks. In the textbooks, from class 1 to high school, there are some hate materials. And we are telling again and again the schools are to create uniformity and also to bring people together. And therefore, the textbooks, the content of the textbook should be more human, with the human values, so that we make personalities, we make behavior, and we form people for future to live together. So this is what we always tell government. And government always promise, but up till now, nothing has happened much. So this is what, again, problem we are facing. Then also, Pakistan also suffered a lot with the terrorism. Terrorist people are all over. They are attacking not only churches, but also mosques and also markets, also many schools. This is also overall situation of Pakistan. When we talk about Pakistan and Christians, what is to be done is, many people all over the world, they don't think that there are Christians in Pakistan. Many people, even my name is Sebastian, when it happened 2-3 times, when I went for any visa or for any other office work, people ask me, are you Christian? Oh, are there Christians in Pakistan? So people are so ignorant. Though people have access to internet and everything, but it depends on the interest of the person. Many people don't want to know. This is also sad to say. Don't want to know what is happening around the world, because everybody is happy with his own life, satisfied, so why to think about other person? This is, I think, indifference towards other is also, it exists. That is why what is happening in Syria, Iraq, after maybe 5 years or 7 years, people are opening their eyes. Only they listen the cry of people. This is how sometimes we feel. Last year we had a meeting in UK, and Sister Annie from Aleppo, she was also there. There was 1 or 2 other people. When I asked them, they are suffering people, we are also suffering people in Pakistan. So when we met together, so she told me, she said, it looks like we are persecuted and we are forgotten. Nobody wants to remember us. So we are at the mercy of persecutors. We are at the mercy of persecutors, so nobody wants. ACN, Aid to the Church in Need, takes some drastic action, visits them, still continually visit them. The same thing happens with us also. There are only few people that are interested to help us. I will talk later again. So in this way, I think one thing is to know what is happening around the world. Maybe if you can't do anything, but as Cardinal said, at least we can pray. We can pray, and that I think we can do, even sitting at home. And now, in total population of Pakistan is 120 million approximately. 3% are nearly Christian, 1.8 are Catholics, and the other are other denominations, Anglican Church and other Methodist, Seventh Day, and all people, Salvation Army. The steps to be taken is, one thing is to know your own religion and religious tradition. That is important, to know your own religion and also respect your own traditions, not to be shy and afraid to profess your own religion. I think in many parts of the world, people say, no, I don't want to talk about religion because why should I say I am Christian and like that, no, in many parts of the world. I also feel very strongly there is no need to give up your own religious and cultural signs to please other people. This is what is happening also. Now the result is when we give up our own, or we want to please other, and we remove crosses and other symbols from our own culture, maybe classroom or wherever, ultimately then it means that we don't believe in anything. And then the other people are also offended. They said, oh, what is their belief? So I feel it is important to tell. For example, if you do charity, why do you do charity? There must be some motivation behind. And if people understand your motivation, for example, in Pakistan, we are a small minority, very small minority. And when we have interfaith dialogue, and we have also school, and sometimes people ask, why do you do it? So we say, we do it because we are Christian. Because Christ told us, for example, no, we say sometimes, no, the parable of Good Samaritan. And people appreciate. People appreciate. I remember in 2010, when there was a big flood, and Christians were also helping, Muslim also who are suffering. And one or two Muslim asked me, they said, Bishop, your own community is very poor. But still I appreciate, even the army appreciated us because we made announcement in the church, in the cathedral. I also made. I said it's a big flood. So people need help. So people brought a lot of, food and then many other things in the cathedral. So we, gave all to army with the trucks of stuff, food stuff. And people were surprised. But we said, when we say that when you see people suffering, you should help. This is a Christian value. You love one another through your resources also. And love one another does not mean that you love only Christian. Because Jesus said, if you salute to other who salute you, what credit you have? So you go out of your own boundary to help people, to show that you are a human and you respect other person also as a human. So this is what we are doing. I also want to share here that after 9/11, when our presence in Pakistan was also interpreted that we are allies to US or to West. So the result was many churches were attacked, our institutions were attacked, hospitals were even also attacked, schools were attacked. Then we realized, though we started interreligious dialogue sessions, but that time we realized that there is more need to approach other people of other faith. So at least from that time, since that time, we have a very strong interreligious faith group, and we have Muslim scholars and imams, and also we have Hindu and Sikh, even Parsis and Baha'is also are members. So we come on one table, and the first thing is we tell that this is not a religious debate, or it is not a dogma debate. We are here to share what is common among all of us. For example, when we say we want peace, or we want to have a harmonious society, then we say that, okay, Jesus told us love one another, and then our Muslim brothers also share what is written in Quran, Holy Quran, or in the Hindus and Sikh also. So I think this can be also one strategy. And with this strategy, then many misconceptions are understood very well. There are some misconceptions. For example, as I said, when first time I remember when we came on one table, then people asked about 9/11 reactions, what is happening here and there. And even I remember when Holy Father, Pope Benedict, gave some statement or historical statement in Regensburg. That time also we had also problem in Pakistan. Then we started explaining, no, we are Pakistani Christians. We are born in Pakistan. We are here before the creation of Pakistan. And we will live in Pakistan. We are not going to leave Pakistan. So we will live. So in this way, it was good to at least to explain our Muslim brothers, Hindu and Sikh also, what is our role, what is our status as a Christians in Pakistan, why we are here. So that is I think very important to make other person know what you believe and what do you do and why you do what you are doing. So it's important to tell. I always tell, though, like, for example, on last year, on 27th April, on Easter Day, there was an Easter bomb. That media said it was Easter bomb. Many people were killed. Many people were injured. I, as a bishop, also, I was thinking, how should we respond? What should we do? So anyhow, the following day, the same evening, I could not go because the security didn't allow me to go. But the second day, I myself went to hospitals, and the medical superintendent, doctor, he asked me, he thought maybe I was wearing my bishop's dress, And he thought I was there only for Christians. He said, Bishop, do you have a list of all Christians you want to visit? I said, I am not here to visit only Christians. I am Pakistani. So I will visit all victims. They are all human. They lost their families. They are injured very badly. And I am here for all. And I tell you, I visited all people, regardless of religion or creed or faith, whatever they had. And they were also happy that I went there, though it was very difficult to console. I remember there was a lady, Muslim lady, lost 4 family members. How can you console? What can you take? Then there were other 2 Christian sisters. We had very difficulty when we conducted the funeral. One girl was 19, the other was 17. Very difficult to console. You can't say that it is will of God, so you may be consoled. No, we cannot. It's a man-made disaster. We have to profess. We should also not be afraid to tell what is this. But at the same time, we have to create the level of acceptance, whatever disaster it comes to. Resilience will be there. So in this way, it's a good time to visit all, to see all people. So in all these problems, sometimes we also feel in Pakistan, maybe forgotten people, maybe nobody is with us. But only recent time, like I said, like last year, and also before that, on 15th March 2015, when there was attack on 2 churches in Lahore. It was one Catholic church, St. John Church, and also Anglican Church, Christ Church. That time also is a big problem. But some people, they, as I'm just saying it, some people immediately they respond. For example, some people, some bishops, aid to the church in need, often very actively. They sent email that bishops, we are with you, so don't feel rejected or isolated. So in this way, your prayer, your email messages, WhatsApp messages, encourage people to stay there, to live there. So I think it's not only money matters, but aid to the church in need also support us in rebuilding the destroyed churches and schools, laboratories, science laboratories like that, no? And also Missio, Aachen, Missio, Munchen, all these groups, they always help us. One thing also I tell always our people, and I feel it's also good to share here. I tell our people, especially youth, I said, remember 2F. If you are Christian, and living especially in Pakistan, where we are very small minority, remember 2F. 2F means, don't live in fear. Jesus said always, Bible, there is so many words like this, do not fear, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. I always tell, no, do not live in fear. And also, second F is, do not fight. No fear and no fight. What you do, you should be courageous enough to understand the purpose of your own being. I said, you are born in Pakistan. So it means God has some purpose. You are not made, or you are not born accidentally. God has some purpose. So if you are born, otherwise you would have born maybe in America. But it is God's will that you are in Pakistan. So do not be afraid, but only to know your religion and to know your religious values and to know how to express yourself. And expression of self is also not to convert other people. I was telling one day, one of our seminarians, I like to teach and still I teach in the seminary. And one student was telling me, Bishop, I feel when I will become priest, I will baptize many people. This and I said, for example, if you baptize the whole world, what will you gain? But it's not only to baptize the whole world. It is to create quality human being. Quality human being where people respect self and also respect the person. So that is important. So in this way, I feel it's important to work for, to know the purpose of being. Also in Pakistan, because of this terrorism, people realize how to live together, to work together. So we often talk about the value of coexistence, because God has given us it's a planet to live, and this is what we are also promoting through our interfaith or interreligious dialogue. I'm here also thankful to the many groups in Pakistan who are working for to create Pakistan like a peaceful country. Army of Pakistan is also working very hard, and also many people they laid down their life for the safety and security of country. And so in this way, I also hope that in future, Pakistan will be again a place where creation, at the creation and before creation of Pakistan, when people, Christian, Muslim, Hindus, they were living as brothers and sisters. I hope it will be. This is my dream. And also I ask you to pray for us so that together, all over the world, especially in Pakistan, we make a very harmonious society and place, a planet for everybody to live in peace. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you to both of our speakers. We have about 15 minutes for questions and discussion, so I would ask you to identify yourselves when you ask a question. We have microphones here on both sides towards the front, so please come forward, and the floor is open to all three of us.
Actually, my name is Rob Fernandez. I'm going to be a student at CUA and PhD in theology this coming fall, and my area is regarding politics and religion. And I just wanted to ask both of you this question. The cardinal spoke of to not misinterpret or incorrectly interpret the silence of governments. And that it means this or that he believed to some degree that governments are acting, but don't interpret what seems to be silence for a lack of desire. And with that in mind, I'm wondering, from my experience, a lot of Christians in the United States that I know of, a lot of people that I know of, are not necessarily indifferent, that there might be indifference in our society, some of it, but a lot of it is not indifference. A lot of it is sensing that nothing that they do is going to have any impact, that they've tried stuff and it's fallen flat, and that they're so disgusted of what's happening in the world and that they can't do anything about it, so that it's more of a fatalism to a great degree and not indifference. And so is it possible that we are misinterpreting the silence of individuals to some degree? And if we acknowledge that, hey, they're not silent because they're indifferent, that they're silent because there's no avenue that they see of success. And if we acknowledge that they do care, but acknowledge their feeling of impotence, that we may be able to get them to act in ways that are energetic, that are successful, the ways that you have mentioned, Bishop, in terms of writing emails of encouragement and other things like that. So how much do you, in your work, Dr. David, in your work, do you see that occurring? And Bishop, is it really a lot of it indifference on the behalf of individuals, or is it maybe misunderstood? I'd like to ask that question.
Well, thank you for an excellent question. I think that even before we get to silence and indifference is the matter of awareness. And one thing that Cardinal Wuerl drew attention to is how few are even aware of this phenomenon, of what is going on. And so if we are going to expect some kind of vocal giving attention, I think the authors of this report and those who are involved in this project are generally of the view that this is a phenomenon that does not receive attention adequate to what it really is in the mainstream media, in human rights groups, by governments, and so forth. And so getting the word out and creating awareness is, we think is the first step. As far as governments go, I think you're right. Maybe even those who are in governments who may feel sympathy for the issue may not know what the different kinds of levers and means are. In the United States, we have an apparatus in our foreign policy devoted to international religious freedom, the State Department, the U.S. Commission, and so forth. But one of our convictions also of this project is that we think that much more could be done even at the levels of what might be called high security or high diplomacy, and that religious freedom is something that is integrally related to what might be called strategic interest. It's positively related to democratization, to peace, to economic development. And in other words, there's a kind of way in which it, again, Cardinal Wuerl spoke to this, can be grafted into what are typically thought of as the national interest of governments. And one of our, in the Religious Freedom Institute, one of our central goals over the past few years has been to show the relationship between religious freedom, the alleviation of persecution, and the promotion of other very important kinds of interest. And this is one kind of language that governments and policymakers can understand, that makes sense to them. And I think if we can make that case, then it can be shown that religious freedom can be integrated into fighting terrorism, to creating stability, promoting democracy, and so forth. And finally, the third point I would make is that governments are not the only ones that matter. If you look at our range of recommendations and what appears in the back of the report, there are a whole range of different kinds of actors who can be doing many things that are effective in a wide variety of ways. We urge you to look at those. Okay.
Hi, I'm Mark Zimmerman. I'm the editor of the Catholic Standard newspaper in Washington, and I'm national correspondent for the Crux Catholic website. I wanted to ask you, what did you find most surprising in your report, in the research, and what did you find most surprising and inspiring?
Well, of the several findings, perhaps the one that kind of surprised me the most was the broadly nonviolent character of responses. There are some cases of Christians taking up arms, usually in cases where they're immersed in war, but I didn't necessarily expect that the breadth and the kind of consistency of nonviolent responses. But I think it's something that's very interesting. And I think it has a lot to do with how Christians understand the kind of Christian standards for using force. We would be likely to expect it most in situations of war, but also ways in which forms of Christian witness and response are characteristically nonviolent. Practices of forgiveness, of responding by reaching out, of showing love in a whole variety of ways was surprising and inspiring to me. I want to be careful that these are not exceptionless findings. There are some cases of Christians even who have engaged in terrorist forms of behavior, and also we want to be careful about moral judgment and about what people do in excruciatingly difficult circumstances. The taking up of arms, particularly in situations of war, can be understandable and justifiable. But nevertheless, the kind of nonviolent, constructive responses that are taken in response was something that surprised me and I would say inspired me as well. You want to add anything to that?
No.
Okay. That's
Just want to add that non-violent response, and also survival is commonly found in many places. Like in Pakistan also, people suffered persecution, but they always interpret in this way how to live together. More is like survival. Because if you also you also take up arms, then it means you are also ready to kill other person. And we always think, for example, Jesus, when he was in really agony in the garden, and his disciples took up the sword, and he said, no, this is not the way. This is not the way. So I feel this is what we always tell. You also live and let other people live. No need to use violent way just to stop the violence. That cannot be done.
Yes.
Hello, I'm Stephen Kolecki. I'm with the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. First of all, I'm just so grateful for the report. It's very sophisticated in outlining the ranges of responses that persecuted communities, persecuted Christian communities face, and I really appreciate the witness, Archbishop Sebastian from Pakistan. And so my question is really for both of you is, at times in Pakistan, U.S. policies are not popular. I'm thinking of drone strikes, for example. And so does it help or hurt when either our government or our churches in the United States speak up strongly for Christians in Pakistan, given the relationship between the United States and Pakistan? Is there any nuance that we should have to our response, or is it just good to speak directly in defense of the church?
You know, one thing is, sometimes direct response can also create a problem. No, it can be misinterpreted. Another way is also when we talk about human rights, about policies and that thing, I think in this line, like now, I think it's just 2 years back, now we established in Pakistan, also in Islamabad, it's a National Office for Human Rights. Yes. In this way, I think together, not pressurizing any group, not but in a nice way, we can help one another how to make the policies so that people diverse, with their culture or something, how they can live together. I think this is what people have to understand, and it takes time. I always understand it takes time. That is why in Pakistan, when sometimes people are frustrated and like that. So I always tell people to change the mind, and it needs time. But if you want to change some physical, physically, you just give bread and butter and eggs every day. After 1 week, you will see the difference. But to change the mind, you need time. So this is what I feel we need the time to do it, and this is what we have to.
Hello, my name is Chris Murray. I teach at Montgomery County Public Schools, a world religion. A two-part follow-up question. In your work in looking at your response to the lack of violence, is there any potential follow-up to work with scholars who look at Islam's and Muslims' responses to persecution as well, and kind of comparing and having some type of statistical analysis amongst the two? And then the follow-up to the media piece, which seems to be misleading many in the West about so much about religion in the world. What's the next steps for getting this information out to more people? Thank you.
No, it's a great question, and it plays into one of the kind of narratives that we're seeing that seems to be dominating the headlines and the airwaves recently. I mean, one of the convictions we have in our study is that what we're putting forth has implications for people of any faith in terms of how they respond to persecution in their own instance, but also how people across faiths can be in solidarity in responding to persecution. That religious freedom is a human right, and the religious freedom of one is the religious freedom of all. And therefore we strongly welcome Muslims who have raised their voices, like we have incorporated into our symposium today. on behalf of religious freedom, sometimes on behalf of persecuted Christians, and we hope that Christians would do likewise. And I think that many of the same kinds of responses to persecution can be found in other faiths as well. And one of the things we stress also is the building of bridges and coalition between faiths. And Robert Dow's work on Nigeria, for instance, he talks about the extensive ties built between Christian and Muslim leaders in response to the violence of Boko Haram. I think of also in Egypt, for instance, where after bombings like the one we just saw on Palm Sunday, and we've seen several prior to that, we see Christians and Muslims, Christians surrounding mosques and Muslims surrounding Christian churches, joining hands to in this kind of protective gesture. I think we need to be honest about Islamic terrorism, and that this is indeed a global, Islamist terrorism. This is indeed a global phenomenon, and something that we do encounter widely, and one must speak openly and forthrightly and name it. And yet, we want to be honest about that in a way that also doesn't preclude the kind of hopeful and constructive mutual responses. And so that's the kind of narrative that we would like to see take hold more in the media. This commonality, the universality of religious freedom, the universality of this human right, and to resist a narrative which says that this is a Western, something that has only been discovered in the West, or something that is only a part of the Christian tradition, that is sort of then being, brought into a kind of clash of civilizations dynamic. So it's the kind of commonality and mutuality, and building that sphere of mutuality, a kind of global constituency for religious freedom as much as possible.
Regarding your question about the media, the case that I worked on, Turkey, I think is instructive. I think the Christian communities there have demonstrated that they have a greater awareness, and the media is missing this, of the tendency not to dichotomize between two different types of authoritarianism, secular and religious. And for Christian communities there, when they speak out about, very carefully usually and very discreetly, but when they speak out about the forms of repression and persecution that they're subjected to, they articulate this in language of a response to authoritarianism. And they demonstrate and try to express an awareness that secular and religious forms of authoritarianism operate according to a very similar logic. So they speak about authoritarianism or unfreedom because that's something that affects them in particular, but more broadly, all members of the society. And I think if the media were to hear that, that's a very important message that helps to reframe the source of problem, the strategies of response, and potential solution. And the other thing that, again, I saw in the Turkish case is that the strategies of response tend also to lay clear the fact that types of repression differ, that the media tends to focus largely on episodes and incidents of violence. But as Archbishop Shaw pointed out in Pakistan as well, forms of persecution and repression that are visited, certainly in my case in Turkey, are oftentimes nonviolent. And they masquerade under the guise of legality. And so I think that, again, the communities, when they speak out, and if the media would hear this, this would be very useful, would recognize that those nonviolent forms of repression are as pernicious as violent forms. And again, they oftentimes affect other communities beyond Christian communities. So there are messages that we can hear from those strategies of response that could help the media to reframe the way we think about potential solutions. Yes, sir.
Galen Carey, National Association of Evangelicals. A question about your finding about the prevalence of the different responses. What is the denominator? Is it the number of persecuted Christians or persecuted groups, or And if there's more than one component to the response, did you weight them, or how did you pick which one? In other words, what does it mean, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah. Well, something we gave a lot of thought to, and the methodological question is a very tricky one. And oftentimes in particular countries, you have different Christian communities engaging in different responses. One of the even tricky question is exactly what is a Christian community? Do we look at a kind of traditional Christian church? What about a kind of like an association of house churches in China? What about the fact that even within, say, a church like the Anglican Church in Nigeria, there may be different voices, different responses going in different directions? So with respect to all these kinds of methodological difficulties, we decided to categorize it by country and response, to say if in that country that response is being adopted by one or more Christian communities, then that counts as that response in that country. And so then we added them up. We also have a note at the end, though, explaining how you can also weight them for the fact that there are more responses in each category. There are different numbers of responses. So we also did a weighting, which we explain in the end. Yeah, thanks.
My name is Donald Barnes. I'm from South China University of Technology in Guangzhou, China. I'm interested in this report is very good. I look forward to reading it, and I appreciate your remarks. The tenor that I picked up on this was it was sort of addressed to a U.S. audience about things we ought to do. We ought to become more aware. We ought to, et cetera, et cetera. As you've looked around the world, are there any countries that are doing a better response than we are doing here in the United States that might serve as a model for how we might react?
Thank you this is our last question, and we look forward to the answer.
It's a great question. I mean, one thing, just to answer briefly, given I see these signs being put up, there are a whole lot of different kinds of actors who can respond, not just governments. And so it's one of the things we look at the end of the report. I mean, one thing we're heartened by is the number of different countries who are adopting religious freedom into their foreign policies in some way. So not just the United States, but many European countries. Canada was for a while. Unfortunately, they then pulled back and reversed course. And even the European Union is adopting a strategy of freedom of religion and belief. I think I would have to think more about, is there a country that's doing a better job? I'm not sure. But I am heartened by the kind of growth of a kind of multilateral kind of community of countries committed to religious freedom.
Thank you very much, and thank you to my fellow panelists. We are now going to have the viewing of the film.